Research Methods in Personality Psychology, Part 5, Self-Report Data. Professor Michael Botwin, Department of Psychology, California State University, Fresno. The final kind of data we're going to talk about is actually the most frequently used kind of data. We saved it for last only because of our acronym that I'm going to teach you next. Now, self-reports are the most frequently used kind of data. We simply ask someone to tell us about themselves. And these can include any type of questionnaire information. We might interview the person, but it's information directly from the individual. Now, there are some advantages to this. For example, who knows an individual better than themselves, we think. We already talked about different kinds of data and how that might not always be the case. But we know that self-report data may be biased by things we've talked about in a previous video, like social desirability or other kinds of errors. But it's still the easiest thing to get. People volunteer to participate in Psych 10 studies, which are the main source of participant pools for psychology studies. It's also one of the criticisms of those. And you also have to look at the individual's motivation when they're completing the report. For most basic research applications, there's not a whole lot of motivation for participants to skew their data, so the data actually turn out to be pretty good. If I'm going to be collecting personality data and I'm going to use it to decide who I'm going to hire for a job, well, the motivation might mitigate the ratings. So self-report data, we use it all the time, although we do realize its inherent weaknesses. So let's recap. Let's look at the 4 sources of data we've talked about in terms of personality psychology. We talked about life data. Life data is simply any data in an archive about you, whether it's your school records, your military record, or the things that you buy on Amazon. Observer data. Observer data is simply having a person other than the target person provide information about someone. And observers, as we said, can be just about anybody. We also talk about test data, where data is systematically collected. This is more of an experimental type of thing. We talked about projectives here. We talked about physiological sources of data and stuff like that. So it's a broad area. And then finally, we have self-report. Self-report, the most frequently used kind of data, because it's also the easiest to get. Put it all together, if you need an acronym to remember the 4 sources of data, you got lots of data. And because personality is a very complex thing, we need lots of data to try to figure it out. We'll see you next time on personality psychology. This has been a We Have Couches video production, copyright 2020, Professor Michael Botwin, all rights reserved. Bye now.